Namaste, Jai Bharat. The Iran Israel war is turning into very, very seriously critical phases. Iran has officially declared war on Israel. And the whole situation in Iran is I don't know, so stubbornly idiotic. Very stubbornly idiotic. It's just there are a lot of comparison between Iran and Pakistan. They also say a lot of things. Whereas they should also know that they are not capable of executing what they claim to be. That's precisely what happened in Iran. They have done the mistake of, first thing, attacking the US bases in Iraq. And then thereupon, they attacked the US embassy in Tel Aviv. If you attack an embassy of any nation, no matter where, that should be treated as an act of war against the concerned nation whose embassy is attacked. So that invites a lot of trouble. And the US is already prepared, and their military installations are well positioned, well stationed, and well aimed with given definite objectives of what to do and what not to do. Just forget about Israel, because Israel's capabilities are much different. Their dedication is what is more counted than their equipmental capabilities. You may have weapons, you may have a lot of equipments with you, but then the mind behind it that operates it, if it doesn't have a sense of direction and commitment and dedication, then it won't be that effective. That's precisely what the world analysts speak about Bharatiya Sena, Bharatiya services. We call it as services. We don't work in the defense forces for money. We just work it as a part of our existence, part of our karma. We call it as karma, sat karma, our duty. So that whole thing shifts. The whole thing is different. We might not have that kind of very sophisticated latest weaponaries, but then that's not necessary. Our men behind machine are more than sufficient. So that's a different story. So that's the case with Israel. They don't really need that kind of equipment. Even if they don't, they have already very sophisticated equipments, Israel. But then even without that, they have such dedication, because that's the question of their existence. Like our military fights with history behind us, and Israel also fights with history behind them. Now these things make a lot of difference. They are not makeshift army. They are not makeshift defense forces. They are services. We call it services in our nation. So that's a mistake which Iran does against US. And then suddenly the suggestion which came from President Trump is that Iran should go for an unconditional surrender. Iran surrendering really means surrendering of their supreme commander. That President Trump's tweets are actually very sarcastic. The so-called supreme commander, he should unconditionally surrender. And what will happen? See, that person should know, if he is unconditionally surrendering to the US, they'll be handed over to Iran, and they will have, US will have their own regime. It will go for a regime change, number one. Or the other likelihood is that the President Ali Khamenei's son could be substituted for his father, which I don't know the people of Iran would agree to or not. I don't know, or to what extent they support. And these things are not known. But that's one possibility. But the more likely possibility is that with the surrender of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran should go for a democratic change. That can be regime change, not leadership change. Regime change is what is desirable. And that would put the people of Iran in more free space, and they would exist with the entire world as any other nation exists meaningfully. So that is what actually ideally thinks what should happen. But the unconditional surrender is called for by the US, and let's see what happens when there is an unconditional surrender. The person who surrenders is should be tried and then most likely hung. Look at what happened to Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was a similar character, unnecessarily invited his own death by believing in certain things in his own attacks. He thought that he can do many things, but then he slipped into this trap, and he was executed, tried and executed. Look at the pathetic end of Saddam Hussein. He was his own time dictator. In the sense, dictator means he was so brutal a person. He used to kill people with his own hand, and I don't know what kind of pleasure one gets when one kills someone. When one kills someone, uh, whereas you just can't even give life to anything. You can take lives, but how can you give? It's impossible for you to give a life. Some doctors might be doing it. They're helping they're helping the patients to come back to life. Apart from that, a dictator can take lives, but he can't give any life even to an ant. But then they take lives. This is a different kind of mental setup, and it's very repugnantly trivial, I would say. Now, if unconditional surrender commanded us, then he is gone. Will you do it? I don't think he will do it, because if he sensibly thinks, I don't know, if he thinks, then he'll have to endure the torture of terror from which our pedestal used to exist in the past. Then trial, and then the possibility of an inevitable execution. All this he has to put up. I don't think, if I was in his place, I would not have surrendered. If I was in this place, I would have faced a sudden, drastic, miserable death in some kind of attacks. That US says that we know where you are precisely. It indirectly says that we can deal with you anytime, and that's not a joke. They actually can eliminate him no matter where he sits and how he sits and where he hides. So they are asking him to surrender. I do not know what shall happen, but surrender or no surrender. If there's a leadership change in Iran, there's no point. The same story will repeat. They will again go for their nuclear authority. They will again speak in the religious, so-called theological language, and oppress people using religion for their own personal advantage. All these things would repeat. No matter who comes, he would follow the same structure and system. But at this stage, if this regime change, then the people of Iran can go back to their Persian civilization if they want. If the so desire, it's up to the people of Iran how to live. But then at least let them live according to their own wish. Up to them. Let them live in whichever way they want. If they want to live in a religious regime, that's okay for them. It's none of our business. But then, when you look at from outside, we would expect them to live. Ideally, we would want them to in a very most democratic, friendly, to some extent philanthropical existence. At least that would be ideal. So unconditional surrender is asked, and I don't think he will go for unconditional surrender. If one has to force him to get himself neutralized. We shall meet again with some other thought. Namaste. Jai Bharat, Jai Siya Ram.